Welcome to Talk Travel with Heather Tate, North Mississippi's podcast for savvy travelers. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is a weekly podcast that airs every Monday on the Shark 102.3 FM radio station based in Ripley, Mississippi, and is then released as a podcast. Travel advisor and travel enthusiast Heather Tate of Whimsical Destinations gives listeners expert travel tips curated through the years of personal and professional experience. By clicking subscribe, you'll have a new travel tip to add to your collection delivered to your podcast library every Monday. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is brought to you by Sun Bear Studio. Sun Bear Studio is a boutique recording studio in the heart of Ripley, Mississippi. When you record with us at Sun Bear Studio, we can mix, master, register, and publish your music, your podcast, or your family story. Email us when you're ready at sunbear@jc.media.
This program was recorded at Sun Bear Studio in Ripley, Mississippi.
Good morning, Northeast Mississippi travelers. This is Heather with Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and I am so excited to share my adventures and tried and true tips with you, whether you are also a seasoned traveler, a hopeful traveler, or currently an armchair traveler, meaning you're going to follow along with us from home for now. This is our 129th episode of Talk Travel with Heather Tate. And last week, I gave you a little bit of a tease about what we're going to talk about today. And that is the 1,000 Hours Outside Project. So what is this? What does this mean? So I shared with you some of our plans and our adventures for 2025. And this week goes along with that theme of feeling more alive in 2025. And one way that my family is going to choose to do this is by getting outside at least 1,000 hours for the year. Now, we did this a couple of years ago. This is something that has really taken off, especially from the pandemic and on. I saw so many posts about it, lots of families in our area and surrounding areas. And what it's about is that on average, they have found that kids are spending 1,000 hours on electronics every year. So this project is all about putting things back into balance, balancing the electronic time with time in nature and outdoors, time for exploration. And it seems like a lot, right? 1,000 hours seems like a lot. But if you break it down per day, it's really like 2.7 hours a day. Or I round up, makes it easier. 3 hours a day outside. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, well, this is January. And sometimes we have really good weather in January. And sometimes we're like, we can't be outside for 3 hours a day. That doesn't mean you have to be outside 3 hours every day. But it's all about planning and making the most of that time when the weather is great to be outside. But what I love about a Facebook group that is dedicated to this project, there's also a website, and I'm going to make sure that this is all in our notes for 1,000 Hours Outside. But if you're on Facebook, not only do you want to join our Facebook group, Heather and Logan Tate Whimsical Destinations, but definitely look up 1,000 Hours Outside and Mississippi 1,000 Hours Outside, because there's a main Facebook group that's going to have 70,000 plus members. And then there's going to be one for each individual state. And Mississippi has their own. This is a fantastic way of getting ideas for traveling. So if you love outdoor adventures, or if you want to love outdoor adventures, join these groups. So this is travel related, but this is also for your non-travelers. This is for people who are like, I have no desire to leave the state of Mississippi. You can do this too. So this episode is also for you. Remember, I told you that I also talked to my armchair travelers. This is for the armchair travelers who are willing to just get in their backyards. There's so many things that you can do to spend time outside. And there's ways to track it. So let me give you some examples. Okay, so there's a lot of ways you can track your hours. There's an app. 1,000 Hours Outside has an app where you can track your hours. That's an easy way to do it. You can be like me. I don't always go for the easiest way. I had a specific planner I got for $1 from Dollar General, right? That it was my 1,000 Hours Outside planner. And every day I would just put tally marks on that day for how many hours we were outside. So whether it's 2 hours, 3 hours, 8 hours, I would tally it up at the end of the month, or you could do end of the week. My goal was end of the week, but it usually happened at the end of the month. I would tally up the hours, and then I would keep track of each month how many hours outside we had. And you'll find some months you're going to have more hours than others, and that's perfectly fine. But it was a way to hold us accountable. If you don't reach 1,000 hours, that's fine. because more likely than not, if you're tracking it, you're still going to be outside more than you would if you weren't tracking. So we did it for 1 year where we tracked, and then it's probably been 3 or 4 years. And there's some of the habits that we developed during our tracking year. A lot of families do 1 year tracking, 1 year not, 1 year tracking, 1 year not. And that's a good way to do it too, so you don't get burnt out. Other families absolutely love it. So you can track with a calendar. There's printouts on their website where you can print out a coloring sheet, and it has 1,000 different spots on the coloring sheet, and you just fill in a spot for each hour. That's an easy way to do it too. And then when you've filled up your coloring sheet, you have hit your 1,000 hours. One thing that I think I want to do this year, and I saw it, again, I got inspired from the Facebook group, 1,000 Hours Outside, is where it is just like a little display that has 4 places for numbers, 0 to 9. Kind of think of it like a key hook. And you just flip the number each day, how many hours. And so you can keep track of it that way. And you can put it on your wall, so it's in a prominent spot in your house. You can put it up on your windowsill in your kitchen. That's where I have an idea for it. Or it could be one where it's, you have the counter where you click it and it changes the number. It looks like a big clock that you change. And by clicking on it, it changes the number of hours. So lots of different ways. You can track on your phone. You can do it by paper. You can do it by a display. But it just helps you then to stay motivated. Another fun thing about the Facebook group is there's this huge debate, what is considered outside versus not. Now you think, okay, that's simple. If you're outside, it's outside hours. But each family has to decide how they want to count it. Ours is very lax. If we are outdoors, right, like there's, you can feel the air from outside, then I count it as outside. Some families won't count time on your porch, won't count time on a patio. Some don't count if you're at a theme park or a water park. My thoughts are, if I am outside in the elements, I am going to count it. Some families will count if you're driving in the car with the windows down because you can feel the air. I don't, technically, because if I roll the windows up, I'm sitting inside. But I still like rolling the windows down and feeling the air. I just look at that as a bonus. Going on a camping trip is a great way to rack up a lot of hours. Some families will consider sleeping in a tent as countable hours. Some will say if you're sleeping, they don't count. You get to decide what your family counts. I, for example, love counting caves. And technically, they're inside. You have a roof. Because some people say, well, if you have a roof, it's inside, not outside. I count caves because you're surrounded by nature. And a way that someone else described it was, if a bear could eat you, then that's outside. And so I'm like, oh, well, in that case, caves count. So or you're exposed to nature out there because there could be other animals, insects, reptiles also living there. So I think it counts mammals, bats, so I count caves. Some do not, but most would count them. So it's fun seeing like, okay, what do people count? What do they not count? But it also gives you inspiration for what are some things that you can do when you are outside. So one thing that we found that really works well for us is at least it works well for me. I love to dine al fresco. And I used this project several years ago as my excuse that if it was on the weekend, we would oftentimes have breakfast, lunch, and sometimes even dinner, all 3 meals outside. And guess what? If you have an hour per meal, then that's your 3 hours just from eating outside and being outside. I think everything tastes better outside. It's fun for me. Going on a picnic and a walk, then that gives you 2 hours already. So your weekends, if you're like, well, we work during the week, our kids are in school during the week. Not only do you have long holiday weekends, not only are you going to have spring break and summer and all these different things, but you also then can incorporate it throughout the week by doing homework outside. That's something that my boys do. Reading a book outside. Choosing to do your puzzles or playing Legos or playing a board game. We play chess outside more than we play it inside. So you're doing an activity that you could do inside, but you're just moving it to outside. That's not rocket science, but it's a way that you can build up your 1,000 hours and let your kids be creative. Doesn't matter what ages they are. If you have a child who's in the 4th grade, you need to take advantage of the free National Park Pass for fourth graders and their families. That is an opportunity that you have. So maybe they're not fourth grade now, maybe they're third grade. Then be on the lookout for that starting in August, that you're going to be able to do that, and you'll have it through the whole year starting in August. Maybe you have a fourth grader right now. Then you want to look that up to see how you can get your free National Park Pass for your entire family if you have a fourth grader. I'm going to encourage everyone who wants to make sure that they join our Facebook group, because I'm going to have links for the other groups on there. And I would love to see who all is going to do this with us, the 1,000-Hour Outside Challenge. I know there are a lot of local families who did it for 2024, and that's what inspired me. I thought, I was like, this is something that we haven't done in a while. We want to do again. And I think that enough time has passed that my boys will be excited about it again. So the goal is just to have more time outside. And we want to at least match the time outside with the time that is spent on electronics, because there's so many health benefits of being outside. It's good in every way you can imagine, mentally, physically, emotionally. It is great to spend time in nature, to go for a walk, to spend time with your family, lowers blood pressure and stress and anxiety. It's really good getting exercise. That's it for this edition of Talk Travel with Heather Tate. Tune in every Monday at 11 a.m. to turn your travel dreams into travel plans. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for an interview or for access to this interview, go to our website, shark1023.com, and click on the podcast tab. This interview can also be found on Apple, Google, and Amazon Podcast. Keep it tuned to the Shark 1023 and start planning your next trip.
This show is made possible by JC Media, LLC in Ripley, Mississippi. JC Media owns the Shark 102.3 Classic Rock FM radio station where the show is hosted, and Sun Bear Recording Studio where the interviews are recorded. We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Amazon Music, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That email is theshark1023@gmail.com. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app or stream episodes online at shark1023.com/podcasts. Today's episode was produced by Melinda Marsalis. It was edited by Rick Williams and engineered by Chris Marsalis. The podcast technician is Joyce Grady.